I was diagnosed with myeloma in November 2018 after suffering with extreme back pain for several months previously. I kind of since remembered that I'd had other symptoms, but because I'd started a new job, there was a lot going on, I'd kind of dismissed the tiredness, the fatigue, as just kind of a normal part of living a busy life. It was then a few months before I was officially diagnosed that I found out that I'd broken my back, and that led to me being diagnosed. I'd had back pain on and off for a few months, but then I was going to work one day, bent down to put on my shoes, and had horrendous shooting pains kind of up through my back that lasted all through the day. And then I ended up taking 2 months off work because the pain was so intense that, I struggled to walk. I was really, really lucky in that I had a GP and a physio at the GP who wanted to do more investigations rather than just brush off my symptoms. They didn't really trust the scans because the results were showing loss of disc height that they'd expect in someone who was in their 80s, and I was 35 at the time, and so they asked for some more advice. They wanted the scans redone, and they also referred me to the endocrinology department at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, and they decided to do a myeloma screening to rule it out. At the same time, they were bringing in specialists from one of the orthopaedic hospitals, and they ruled it in. I was diagnosed with myeloma 2 weeks after they did the screening.
Usually the patients that we do see with myeloma are very old. You're looking at over 70s, so it's very rare to have a patient of Sara's age. She's probably one of the youngest people in the country to have myeloma.
One of the hardest things when I was diagnosed was the uncertainty. Because I didn't know what myeloma was, I didn't know how it was going to impact my life. I was really, really lucky that in Birmingham we have the Centre for Clinical Haematology, which is partly funded by Cure Leukemia, and as well as the building, they help fund the nurses and the clinical trials, and I was able to join a clinical trial 2 months after my diagnosis, which I've been on ever since.
She was a patient that was identified in clinic by one of our consultants, and she was identified for a study that was screening patients for myeloma to see whether they had high risk genetics, and if they did, they could go on to this study to receive a new treatment called daratumumab and a new way of giving it. So she was a patient here, and when she was first diagnosed, so we met her, got her screened on the trial, talked her through a diagnosis and supported her through that while we wait for the results to come back, and then we put her on the trial and talked her through going on the next stage of the trial and what the treatments were, so we give all of her treatment to her as well.
So I joined the trial in February 2019 and have been on it ever since. It's a 5-part trial including maintenance, and it was quite intense. So the trial is designed to test how drugs that we already know work for myeloma patients, how combining them together can help high-risk patients have a better response and a longer response. Although the trial was really intense, I was at the hospital 2-3 times a week. The biggest benefit that the trial has given me is time.
She's took it on her chin, and she's really positive, and she's really tried to make sure that it hasn't affected her life too much. So about living with her cancer rather than letting it overtake her life. I've got it, I've got to deal with it, this is how I'm going to do it.
So I have high risk myeloma. The life expectancies for myeloma itself aren't that great, which hopefully as more trials improve they'll get better. The life expectancy for high risk myeloma is even worse. I have been really lucky to be given the gift of time through the clinical trial. My mum died in November 2020, and if I hadn't actually spent the last 2 years undergoing treatment and on this clinical trial, I'm not sure I would have actually been around to spend those last years with her. Every trial that is undertaken, every step forward is another beacon of hope for patients.